Hi, I'm Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the senator for Rockville and Gaithersburg. And today I better say Gaithersburg first, because I'm thrilled that my special guest today for Kibbitzing with Kagan is Congressman David Trone. David, thank you so much for taking the time of your very busy schedule to chat with me this afternoon.
It's great to be here, and I'm ready to kibitz.
Okay. So let's start. We'll do a bit of a history lesson on your life first. Why don't you start by how you started your business, Total Wine, and then we'll get into how you pivoted to politics.
Yeah, no, it's going. As you know, I grew up as a farmer, chicken farmer, hog farmer. Farm went bankrupt. They took our farm. I went to grad school, student loans, and realized I had to support the rest of the family, and started a very, very small beer and soft drink store in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And we just worked hard and slowly over the years built up a chain across the United States.
That's great. So what made you start to think about politics?
Well, quite frankly, there's a lot you can do in business to give back. And our company's always been very philanthropic, and we do a lot through our foundation, but you really can't move the needle. I'm not Bill Gates, never will be. We got to move the needle, and federal government can move it to the areas that I really care about. And so you had to get in the game to make a difference.
Fantastic. So a lot of business people are conservatives, are about looking out for themselves and their bottom line. What made you a Democrat? What values really spoke to you about the Democratic Party?
Yeah, the Democratic Party is about realizing that some folks need some help. And, we have an obligation to reach out. My family will all be Democrats, and we'll all stay Democrats. And, we have very progressive values. And so there's really no option on this. It's like the only place you can possibly land. And if you want to help people and make a real difference.
Right. So you had a couple of exciting races for Congress and got elected to represent the 6th Congressional District, which is very diverse geographically and politically, from Western Maryland all the way down to chunks of Montgomery County, including Gaithersburg. Why don't you talk about what surprised you, and why do you think such a diverse district has continued to elect you?
Well, you're absolutely right. The diversity is mind-numbing. I mean, Gaithersburg, we got this, beautiful, vibrant, diverse, city, and that's where I have my main office. But when you get to Western Maryland, it's a whole nother world. I mean, there's probably more deer there than there are people. And it's a very Republican area, quite frankly. So those upper 3-4 counties, Garrett, Allegheny, Washington, parts of Frederick, are just like a whole new world, but they're kind of like the farm I grew up on. Rural, small towns, fire halls, one stoplight, the VFW, the Veterans of Foreign Wars. And so, frankly, because I'm a business person and, want to just work with everybody, I think it resonates there, and they appreciate the straightforwardness, the sincerity of the issues I really care about.
Well, so let's get into those. But before we do, I just have to echo what you just said, the collaboration, the reaching out, the caring about people, and engaging with the wonderful diversity in your district. I can just tell you, as one of your constituent state senators, that you and your staff have been extraordinary to partner with, and I am grateful for that. So why don't you talk about some of the issues? Let's start with supply chain, which is a really important issue related to trade and economic development and so much more. And you came with a great deal of experience on that.
Yeah, we saw with COVID the total failure of the world supply chain. I mean, we put too much resilience in unreliable partners. And when you think about supply chain, and my company buys products from 40 countries, so we do a lot of supply chain work. But when you rely on China for your N95 masks at a 95% because they save $2, that's just a mistake. We need production in America. If it costs $2 more, let's create American jobs and have it here. But if you don't do that, you're really putting a lot of risk into the system We had a big meeting today on, rare earth metals and pharmaceuticals. And again, relying too much on China, we've got to develop our own American jobs, our own American industry.
And can you explain why that won't cause trade wars? We won't buy from you. We're only buying from ourselves. And why wouldn't they do the same? Whoever they
We
is.
don't want to only buy from ourselves. We want to be part of the whole world order, of course. But we can't just say we're only going to rely on China for this. We're only going to rely on, South America for this. I mean, we need to have diversity of sourcing, and especially on these things that are, health related, like pharma and all the problems we have with COVID. They've got to rise to a different level. That's different than where you buy your automobile, or you get your gasoline. This is people's health.
Amen. So why don't you talk about some of the other issues that you're particularly passionate about?
Yeah, well, that we've really run hard on addiction and the issues there. We've talked about, you and I many times, the loss of my nephew. He was, 24, he died alone in a hotel room from fentanyl. And he was, right from here in Montgomery County, and, went to Churchill High School, and, he should have had a different life. But that drug is just so strong. And so much of America, we treat addiction like a crime when it's a disease. And we've got to be honest about this and lean into it. But Cheryl, last year we lost 88,000 people to addiction, overdoses. 93% of those were on fentanyl. So fentanyl is what my nephew died of also. So that 88, that's a record in the United States. We've now lost over 600,000 people. And that means something, because we see the COVID number every day. And when you think, Cheryl, 600,000, since 2020, and the numbers going the wrong way. So that's the biggest issue. There's a couple others. That's the issue I really focus on. And we're going to make a difference. We're making progress.
Yes. No, you've been an extraordinary leader on that. You've also been very outspoken about reasonable gun control. Why don't you talk about that? I think that's courageous in your politically diverse district. Why don't you talk about what you think is a reasonable response?
Yeah, the American public supports gun safety,
Yes.
85, 90%. It's mind-boggling. And when you look at the loss of lives, we're a gun country. And this isn't the 1800s where you needed a gun to defend yourself. We have a lawful country. No one needs a firearm in their house to defend themselves. They want to have a firearm to hunt, that's fine. Get it registered, go through the background checks, eliminate the loopholes. But the other piece is the suicide piece. About 28,000 people die every year on suicide by gun. And that's an impulsive moment where they just were really down, really depressed, and they made one bad decision. And if they would have not had that gun in the house, not had that ammunition, they might have called their friends. They might have called, a neighbor. They might have called anybody and said, wait a second, think this through a little bit more. Don't just make that impulsive decision. And so we've got to fix this. And the whole American population agrees, but government's not leading. They're way behind.
So I lost a first cousin to suicide by gun.
Yeah.
And so you are spot on. And I don't talk about this much, but he was amazing. And he tried to get a gun. I was one of the lobbyists that worked with Jim and Sarah Brady to pass the 7-day waiting period, the Brady bill.
Yeah.
He was rebuffed in one state that had a strong waiting period law. And ultimately he succeeded after going to another state where he was able to procure a gun and kill himself.
Well, some of the work you've done on the suicide hotline and those type of things are, that's just so crucial. When people have that moment, we got to get them the help. And if we don't move quick.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's turn to another issue that is in the news, which is campaign finance and voting reform and voting restrictions and all that. Why don't you talk about the crazy stuff that's going on around the country and about what you're trying to do about it?
I mean, ever since Shelby County v. Holder, I mean, we've turned, the whole voting rights on its head. And as soon as that case came down, so many of our Southern Republican states moved to limit voting. I mean, it's the most fundamental right to have everybody to vote. I support a national paid holiday so everybody can vote. They don't have to worry about it. But so many folks in lower income brackets, just can't get the day off. They don't have the time. They're juggling 2 jobs, children. It's hard. We got to make it easy to vote. We got to drive voting. And if we drive it, we'll get better folks in office.
Right.
Because we won't be fixated on just a few. And of course, we've got to get reform, in campaign finance, the PACs, the lobbyists. I mean, I don't take PAC money, I don't take lobbyist money. And, that's, they've got an inside track on everybody. And look at the NRA, number 8, look at Big Pharma, number 1. And we wonder why our drug costs are so high. Well, $2 billion of lobbying and donation fees over the last decade for Big Pharma.
Right. So in Maryland, we have expanded the number of early voting days. We have made it easier to vote by mail. And so there's not just the focus on one day at one particular time and trying to open the doors to make it easy for people who work and have, childcare needs and all that. So a work in progress. So thank you for your leadership on that. Let's talk about public safety. Certainly, George Floyd's murder just was devastating. Breonna Taylor and Freddie Gray here in Maryland and too many others. Why don't you talk about your thoughts about how we support our police, firefighters, paramedics, 911 specialists, and others, while also making sure that people are safe?
Yeah, we clearly have to reimagine, our policing system. And we've asked our police to do so many different things. And, we've talked about Officer TJ Bamba who committed suicide, in Montgomery County. And, we have a bill on that. We work with the NIH mental health. It's called the Cops Counseling Bill. And it's if someone's going to carry a gun, I think if they need counseling, we should get it for them.
Right.
And it's something that's common sense, it's bipartisan, but we've asked our police to deal with folks that are mentally disturbed, deal with folks who are in active addiction, deal with all kinds of crazy things that they're not trained for. And that's just not fair to anybody. And then, behind this, we have a criminal justice system with clearly systemic racism. I mean, I was in Selma twice with John Lewis. I mean, we have gone from slavery to Jim Crow to mass incarceration. 82% are people of color. And it is a failure of the American system when 25% of the world's prisoners are here. Yeah. And we're 4.3% of the world's population.
So you mentioned bipartisan, and yet there's so much going on recently and currently that's not at all bipartisan. So why don't you start to talk about our infrastructure needs and why it is that the Republicans won't collaborate despite the president's efforts?
Yeah, no, it's really frustrating. I think they will collaborate on the part about bridges and roads, and because everybody wants to bring home a bridge or a road, yeah. And that'll probably get 60 votes. But the other part, which is the part I really care about, we got a lot of roads and that's fine. What I care about is what I call people infrastructure. And that's infrastructure that directly impacts your life, your family, my family. And why aren't we investing the billions? We don't need every single road. Let's invest the billions in behavioral health care, certified community health clinics, addiction specialists, research in how the brain works with addiction, how the brain, why we, have all these mental health challenges in America. I mean, we're spending our time from the neck down on research, and yet we've got to work for the neck up because that's what's overtaking America in COVID. It's just made it so much worse. The anxiety, the depression, the financial collapse. So we've got to get our priorities right. And it should be people infrastructure.
I love that. That's great. Let's rewind the clock just for a second. talk for just a moment and then we will put it behind us. What was the hardest thing about the Trump administration for you as a member of Congress?
I don't know where you start on that one.
Right.
It's just, I mean, it was a train wreck from day one the whole way through. He continues to be a train wreck. I've never in our adult lives ever seen anything like it. We never will see anything like it again, I pray. I mean, this was a man that's just completely devoid of any empathy and any, passion or caring for others. I mean, you go into public service to move the needle to help other folks that are in stress, and you can improve their lives. And, his whole approach was just, all about him. I mean, it's just was sickening, it's revolting, and it was embarrassing for the United States to have had a person like that. And how he ever got elected, I mean, I supported Hillary Clinton strongly. I mean, she would have been an awesome president.
Yeah.
And boom, we got the worst of all possible worlds. And he won't go away.
Right, right. So one of the most horrific days of modern American history was January 6th of this year. I know that was traumatic for every member of Congress, but to the degree that you want to share a part of that day, you've talked about it, but the insurrection, the attack on the fundamental symbol of our nation, our US Capitol. Do you want to share a little bit about your experience that day?
No, I appreciate that. It's just mind-blowing that something like that could ever happen. And the fact was incited, driven directly by the President of the United States. I mean, that's what, because he didn't like the outcome of an election that was certified by 60 different, judicial bodies. I mean, I was on the floor on the chamber, when it all happened. And, they first came to us and said, they're beating on the door. And, we had to stop proceedings. And all we're doing is a pro forma approval of an election that's already left. It's just purely ministerial, nothing of consequence.
Right.
Then we got the signal that they've now entered the rotunda. And then we got a third interruption where they were literally, you could hear them beating on the doors. And we were asked to put our gas masks on, keep low and begin to exit. And, shots have been fired. And it was just a horrible nightmare that, I mean, you're looking around, you're like, I'm in the United States Congress, inside the Capitol here, and we got totally insane, crazy people driven by the guy down the street at the White House.
Yeah.
Because he didn't like the outcome. Right. You lose. You don't win everything in life.
Right, right. Well, let's shift to a much happier topic. So Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, thank God, are our president and vice president. When they were coming in on January 20th, what were you most anticipating, most excited about?
Well, we were supported Biden early on. He was out to my house. My wife and I did a fundraiser for them. My wife and I were here at the inauguration, and it was just such like a lift off your shoulders of a weight that we'd had around our necks for 4 years. And you got this really, genuine, real person. And I've spoken with Kamala. I mean, what a brilliant mind. I mean, just, you can feel the empathy when you talk to her. And, it's just like a light bulb went off, darkness to daylight. Yeah. And what he's done so far is just, so exciting. The American Recovery Plan is just spectacular. It's a huge movement in our country to help those that need the help.
Yep. So you referenced your wonderful wife, June. June is Jewish, and the two of you have been very active in the Jewish community and very supportive. Do you want to speak briefly about the Jewish community, about Israel? There are always challenging times, so we're not talking about anything in particular, but just globally, your attitudes and your beliefs.
I think it's important, and we have that front and center. June's very involved in so many different, Jewish groups and Jewish activities, and I'm Christian, and one of the places I spend a lot of time is at our mosques. And, we've helped them through our foundation to defend, folks that are Muslim from being attacked by Trump. And the imams often say, we're here with a Christian married to a Jewish wife supporting us Muslims. And that's how America should work. I mean, that's the fabric, of who we are. And I remember we were at our temple, and when they had the shooting in Pittsburgh, and my daughter received her Jewish name there at the Tree of Life.
Right.
And there was a whole group of Muslims that attended that to show solidarity.
Nice.
And that's the America that we know. But it's not the America of Trump, an America of divisiveness.
True. You referenced your foundation. You and June have been very philanthropic. Tell me what some of your priorities or pick one gift that you all have made that you have found particularly meaningful, effective, or inspiring.
Yeah, I think the most important thing we've worked on for 2 decades now is the criminal justice system with the American Civil Liberties Union. So we have been members of the ACLU for 2 decades, and we established the Trone Center for Justice and Equality, in New York City. So all the ACLU work in criminal justice comes through the Trone Center. And I mean, just last year, we, through the courts, got rid of the death penalty in Washington State. The ACLU helped fund, the voter registration for returning citizens in Florida. So we're fighting fights all over the country for some folks that have been the most marginalized of all, and of course, are predominantly folks of color, that we have a responsibility to step up. And the head of the ACLU, Anthony Romero, we were actually together, June and I and him, on 9/11. We were at the Capitol Hilton at a donor conference at 8:30 in the morning. And, that it really cemented us together. And he's been to my house for bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs. And, we're just, one team.
That's great. Well, the ACLU was one of my beneficiaries at my first inaugural, on the date that Donald Trump was being inaugurated. We gathered and sold out a 500-seat concert hall and enjoyed 5 musicians raising money for 5 causes, including the ACLU. So
yeah, excellent work. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for supporting it. And it was really fun. So you have recently gotten onto the Appropriations Committee. That is a big deal for you and for Maryland. It reflects the respect with which you've held, the role that you can play and will continue to play in Congress. Why don't you talk about that process as well as why you think it matters?
I think that there was a recognition that we're policy folks. We have a great office, a great team, and it's not just the great Sonny and the great work he does in the field. It's the team here we have at the office. We're policy driven. We don't have any interest in CNN. And I think that's, people recognize that. They want people that are the adults in the room there. Obviously coming from business, I understand appropriations and budgeting. And so I worked really hard with leadership, and leadership, we've helped support candidates all over the United States in both the House and the Senate and governor's races, so we can maintain that Democratic majority. And so I spoke to Speaker Pelosi. Her comment to me was, Dave, you're only in your 2nd term. She said, it took me 5 terms to get on appropriations. And I said, well, I think I need your help. And Steny was phenomenal. All credit goes to Steny. He drove it and helped us, get there. But we also did the work.
Yeah.
There are 52 members of the steering committee. I called all 52 before anybody else called but one of them.
Great.
So if you get in early, you have your focus, you're going to be successful. And with the infrastructure bill coming down on transportation,
yes,
that's going to be, I sit on that subcommittee. That's going to be good. And we also sit in the subcommittee for criminal justice with the Department of Justice. And with what's happened with George Floyd, that's going to be a good spot. So I'm excited about it. We can do a lot of good.
So I just want to give another shout out to you and your staff on the topic related to appropriations in terms of working with my office, with me and my staff, on what are some important nonprofits and what do you think of this group and this group, and would you write a letter endorsing them for funding and all that. That was extraordinary, and that is not something that happens terribly often. So thank you very much for that kind of collaboration.
Yeah, business, Cheryl, you really understand that it's about your customer, which is your constituent.
Right.
And so we really, really take it dead serious and relentless to solve any and every problem. And if we have individual problems, they'll put me on the phone. We'll make a call to whoever it is. One person, one problem, we're still happy to go to bat. But that's what you got to do.
Right. That's impressive. That's great. A few more questions before we get to the fast five and wrap up our conversation here. So first off, what advice would you give to a young person or a middle-aged person who's thinking about getting into politics?
I think it's the more young people that we can get in and the more diversity we can get into politics. You know, I say that's at my mosques all the time. You folks need to not just vote, you need to run for office.
Right.
So those are good things. You know, that diversity, gives us the strength that, our country has, but you've got to get involved early, join your Young Democrat Club, get out and knock on doors, write letters, field phone calls, and begin to network and then begin to learn about the issues.
Yep.
I mean, there's a lot of issues. I understand business inside out. Now I'm learning this new set of issues.
Mhm.
And, you've got to be comfortable doing that and expanding, your mind in the new areas. And you got to be inquisitive and ask a lot of questions.
Love that. I'm also going to say, keep being reliable, keeping your commitment. If you say you're going to do something, show up on time, get it done. Sometimes the enthusiasm, the commitments outpace the follow through.
No, people, you've got to bring it over the finish line and you got to be present. So, we've been out on the street in the district, relentlessly. And I think people see that and appreciate it. And that's helped us in Western Maryland, which is a tough area for a Democrat.
Sure. Yep. So in terms of young people or anyone getting involved, one of the great ways of people getting involved is the David Trone reelection campaign, which was recently announced, and I'm thrilled about and very proud to endorse you and support you and help in any way I can. Why don't you talk about 2022, your race, what you anticipate, as well as winning back the governor's race and making sure we hold our legislative majorities?
Well, we've got to come behind a candidate for the governor's race, and we've got to take back the state house, and I think we will in Maryland. But as far as my race, we wanted to get out early. We wanted to signal our intentions so people knew that what we were going to focus on. And with the appropriations piece behind me, it's going to give me a lot more clout on the national level. But we've really got to work hard in 2022. You and I both know it's a midterm election with a Democratic president.
Yep.
And that combination of same in the White House, same in the House and Senate, only 3 times has that party gained seats. That was after the Great Depression, that was after the Cuban Missile Crisis, and after 9/11. And those are the 3 different midterm elections, 2 Democrat, 1 Republican, where you gain seats. And we don't have any seats we can lose.
Right.
So we've really got to outwork everybody. I mean, John Delaney won my seat by 2,000 plus votes. I mean, it's the most competitive district in the state. There's no question about it.
Right.
And we're not going to carry those upper counties.
Right. Anything you want to say about redistricting?
No, I think that overall we need to get a national model. Everybody's got to go together. We have to eliminate gerrymandering, independent commissions. That's the best thing for everybody. The Republicans with Karl Rove led off on gerrymandering. They took the state houses, then they set the map. And so we've got to get that where gerrymandering goes away, because it lets a very small group of folks, really rule through the primary, over the majority. And of course, we said earlier, opening up voting, and, that everyone's excited for the vote and can't wait to cast their vote.
Well, I hope people are looking forward to voting to re-elect David Trone to Congress, because he's doing a great job, folks. David, is there any topic, any issue, legislative or political, that you want to bring up in a minute, but now before we shift to fast?
Yeah, no, just quickly, I think the other piece is, we're leading Congress on addiction, but I'm also looking to lead on mental health.
Yes.
So we're moving into that position. As you know, it's totally connected, with addiction. So, we set up our new caucus. It's called the Bipartisan Addiction and Mental Health Caucus. We've got over 100 members now. That's 25% of Congress. Again, bipartisan. And we're really working to move. We put 12 bills already in on addiction and mental health, all bipartisan, which means we can get through the Senate. I mean, if we want to just hear ourselves talk, we can put in a partisan bill that's going nowhere and everybody can clap. But, you and I don't, we didn't come to public service for that. We came to public service to get stuff done.
Right.
So we've got to find to get through that Republican 60 vote majority in the Senate. And yeah, I'd like to get rid of the filibuster, but it's a reality right now. So mental health, COVID has just hammered mental health like it has addiction. It's a crisis in America, and all help in that area is really appreciated.
That's great. Well, thank you, David, and thank you to your staff for all you all do to serve the residents of the 6th District of Maryland and our entire nation. You bring a common sense, independent-minded background with just a problem-solving, as you said, get it done attitude, which is totally where I come from. So, Congressman David Trone, the fast five quick questions to let people get to know you a little better. And I had like 8 different questions, so I've narrowed it down. Start, one word that you would hope somebody would use to describe you.
Passionate.
Love it. 2, what is your favorite place to visit in Maryland?
I'll tell you, downtown Frederick and Gaithersburg.
Nicely done. All right. Who was your favorite president and why?
I love Lyndon Baines Johnson. I mean, he got stuff done. He got over the finish line. What he did with, all this great society and voting rights. Fantastic. And Hubert Humphrey, the VP, their pictures are right here in my office on the wall.
Nice. That's great. 4th, is there a hobby or a new practice that you have picked up during the coronavirus?
No, I think it's just reading more books and stuff. I mean, I'm reading a book now about Churchill, and it's not like the giant biography. It's like 40 and 41, during the German bombing and exactly how he went about day to day in his leadership to rally Britain behind him and convince FDR that Britain can hold on and we've got to come save them. And so I think we've done more of that since then. And
yeah, I would say that that's true for me too. And the last question, Congressman David Trone, what is your hidden secret superpower? What are you especially good at that most folks can't do?
Well, I like change and I like new ideas, and some folks just have trouble with new ideas and trouble with change. So I always talk in business, run to the problem, don't run away, run to the problem and be comfortable with change and get comfortable with failure. Because if we're not failing, we're not going to have the number of successes that we should have. So to punch the ceiling out, we've got to fail. And failure is a good thing. We'll learn and we'll keep moving.
Fantastic. What a great answer. Thank you. Thank you again, Congressman, for your time, for your leadership, for your passion, and for your commitment to serving communities. It's really been a delight to kibitz with you this afternoon.
Senator, I enjoyed kibitzing, lots of fun. Best of luck. I look forward to continuing to work together as Team Maryland.
Absolutely. Stay safe. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.